1. So for context, my husband and I bought our first home in a small-town residential neighborhood. It wasn't our ideal location, but the way the market was 2 years ago when we bought made it seem like an opportunity we couldn't pass up. The house hadn't officially hit the market yet, and we offered it asking price, not getting outbid like every other house we looked at. It was exciting, perfect, and peaceful. This was our first house together, and we were getting married a few months after buying our home, so we were happy and excited for our next chapter. That is, until our neighbor moved in. 6 months later, the house next to us went up for sale, and our now neighbors moved in. She is a single mom with 2 teenage kids. Over the past 2 years, we hear mom screaming, cussing, and throwing things in the house and outside in the yard. This happens all times of the day and very often. I'm assuming at her kids, as it's just them there. She's so loud that we hear her word for word, even when her windows and our windows are shut when they're inside. 2 weeks ago, my husband and I decided to host a small group of friends over for a backyard bonfire. There was no music, no getting rowdy, just friends talking around a fire. Around 10:45 p.m. on a Saturday night, our neighbor opened her window and screamed at us, "Be quiet and go to bed!" And I mean yelling. We were confused as we were just talking and maybe occasionally laughing. 10 minutes later, the cops showed up at our house due to a noise complaint. The cops ultimately didn't do anything and said they were required to make contact. However, we were told we were not being loud and the officers left. Fast forward 2 weeks later to today, and we were hosting a small group of friends again, this time doing the same thing, hanging out in the yard, enjoying the nice weather and talking. And it was getting later, around 10:30 p.m., and our town does technically have quiet hours between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. We were about to wrap up and head inside to avoid any further conflict with our crazy neighbor. Well, 5 minutes later, our neighbor comes outside screaming, "I need to talk to the homeowner. You are the most inconsiderate effing neighbors ever. You have 20 effing minutes until the city's noise ordinance starts. You need to learn how to grow the F up. Maybe put a baby in your life to learn what responsibility is, and it will force you to grow up. Go buy some land and move far away from my house." They were there first, you dumb bitch. "My kids and I are trying to sleep, and you're being so effing rude," and lots more cursing. You get the idea. Just going off, my husband tried to de-escalate her behavior by saying, "Hey, can we just talk about this? There's no need to yell," and would get cut off over and over by her to then have her continue to curse. She started throwing threats left and right at us, calling us every name under the sun. She was screaming at the top of her lungs and got animated so quickly. Her behavior was so explosive and extreme, considering we never have people over later besides those 2 times. Both times we're just talking. Again, no music, craziness, partying, etc. I'm so afraid of her after seeing this extreme behavior. I'm so paranoid because I feel like I don't know what she's capable of at this point. She truly seems mentally ill based on her reaction. Is there anything I can do? We already have 2 cameras in front of our house, and we have a camera we have yet to put up in the backyard. Our yard is fenced in, chain link, and we live right next to them. I'm talking like 15 to 20 feet between our houses. I'm so frustrated that we can't enjoy our home and have our friends and family come over for a simple fire, or just sitting outside talking with friends. The neighbors behind both me and the crazy lady have a pool, pickleball court, movie theater, etc. outside. And they are outside all summer at late hours hosting events and being a little loud. Not once has it been an issue. We're so thrown off by this, as we've never had issues the past 2 years we've lived next door. Knowing she's a single mom, we've offered to help her with yard work, house projects, help with teens if needed, offering to drive them places for her. Brought them food, nothing but nice and neighborly. We don't bother her and constantly ask to help her. When we're both outside, these are things she's mentioned that are difficult for her being a single mom, and that's when we offer to help her if she never needs anything. We only bring it up that one time when it's mentioned. I'm a very anxious person who hates conflict and yelling. I grew up in a home environment with lots of yelling and witnessing my mother being verbally, mentally, and physically abused by her at the time boyfriend. I have a lot of trauma around yelling and fighting, and it's something I'm working through in therapy. I have considered going over to her house and trying to have a respectful conversation, but I'm not sure she's capable of that at this point. If this was your neighbor, what would you do? 2. I recently moved into a new house in January. Long story short, I have a crazy neighbor and things are getting a bit out of hand. Without outing anyone, we call the crazy neighbor Bob. The first day I moved in, another neighbor, Jim, introduced himself and was very welcoming. I didn't really get to talk much because I was unloading and he was walking his dog. A month later, I was getting home from work when he came up to me and we actually got to chat and get to know one another. He seems like a very nice dude, and all of a sudden Bob comes out from his house with a bucket and walks across the street. Jim tells me he's been dumping feed corn on someone else's property for a while, and when he came back he shouted at him, not in an aggressive way, but more projecting his voice since he was about 200 feet away. Bob then proceeded to yell back that he can do whatever he wants. And they get into a back and forth, Jim being rather rational and telling him he can't dump stuff in someone else's property. And also, he can't feed wildlife where we live. Bob proceeded to be a dick and went back for another dump of corn. After this, Bob went in his house for a bit, and then came back out with his dogs to get in his car, but they weren't on a leash, so they ran right up to us and started barking. One was a collie, and one was a small terrier. I've been bitten before, but I wasn't necessarily terrified. They were just annoying. He then came over to get them and didn't really say anything. Jim and I walked away to get behind his truck, and then they bickered back and forth for a bit and fizzled out. Bob then left in his truck. Apparently these two have a long beef and history. Jim then apologized for getting like that way in our first encounter, and I thought nothing of it. He told me some stories about Bob, and apparently he is, for lack of a better word, insane. He said a few years ago, him and his girlfriend got in a fight, and both wound up pulling guns on one another. Oh, how lovely. Another time, Jim said he was walking his dog at night, and Bob came out his front door brandishing a handgun. Tell me it's America without telling me it's America. He mentioned other crazy instances, more of him patrolling the neighborhood, which I have seen him do many times since I moved in, but those two were the most concerning and wild ones. He is pretty much the bully of the neighborhood and seems to be a little off his rocker. A few weeks later, I heard some noise out of my window, and Bob's dog was on my property, and he was much at the end of my driveway, watching for about 2 minutes. I'm a bit of a coward, so I didn't want to confront him, so I just went back to my business. I did, however, email the code enforcement about dogs off their leash, and did mention the time that they ran up to us, in a little bit of pettiness. Excellent. A few days later, they paid him a visit. Lately I started a new job and have been gone most of the day, and have just been keeping to myself, so I didn't hear any neighbor drama, so I thought it was a one-off. But Tuesday, on my day off, I was playing Lies of P, and I hear a knock at my door, and it was the captain of the police department. I'd been playing guitar earlier, so I thought it was a noise complaint, but he asked me if I knew anything about what happened earlier. I had no clue what he was talking about, and he hinted that Bob and Jim got into another spat. I told him I didn't hear anything, and we chatted for a few seconds. He seemed like he had been dealing with these two for a while, and he seemed like a tired dad. As he was leaving, Bob came up to him, and he just said, "Bob, get back," or something. I went back to playing video games. The next day, I was leaving for work. Jim came out and asked what the cops were asking me about, and I told him. He then said Bob and him had an argument, and Bob pulled a knife out. I was shocked and didn't have time to really chat about it because I was going to be late for work, so I left. Also, Jim asked me if I heard what Bob had been saying about me, and I said no. I guess Bob found out. I called CE on him, and he's been telling my neighbors I'm having, and I quote, dildo parties, well, at least it's a party, on my front lawn, where me and my friends are dressed as Barney the dinosaur. Should have been Barney the dildosaur, missed opportunity. He is saying this because I have a pride flag in my porch. I forgot to mention, if anyone is remotely surprised, he has a MAGA flag, big stickers in his truck that say, "Try that in a small town," and the classic FAFO sticker. Well, I, for one, am shocked and stunned. My flabbers are verily gasted. I'm kind of scared that this dude is going to snap one day, and since he already has a history of pulling weapons on people, might do something crazy. I emailed a city council member, but they didn't really provide me with much. I also don't want to get the cops involved, because they both knew they came to my house at one time. Any suggestions? Hellfreezer's note. Now, I have looked at the comments on Reddit, and I see that you have reasons for not having guns in the house. That would have actually been my first suggestion, and it's not something I ever recommend to people because I don't believe people should own guns. But you know, when you're surrounded by them. But I understand and respect your reasons for not doing so. So you want to arm yourself with cameras. Get cameras up front and back of your property. That way you can monitor what's going on. Take nothing to do with either of these two. I'm sure Jim might be a nice guy, but he's involved in a conflict that you might get dragged into. Take nothing to do with it. And look into what you can as far as non-lethal deterrence will go. The laws will vary from state to state. Also, one thing I would add is you may have to contact the police in future. I know you don't want them coming to your house. I would suggest perhaps just going to the police station. In those instances, explain the situation. Your neighbor's very volatile. They were upset when the police came to your door before. So you're coming to them. So ask if they have to update you on the situation. They just do it via phone call. They don't come to your house. 3. I, female and 30, live in a block of 4 flats. I have cameras, and it picked up on the neighbors opposite mine poking about my downstairs neighbor's front garden and going round the back of our shared garden. The house downstairs is not currently occupied due to works being done. It's going to be rented out. Some items were stolen from my side garden. My camera did not pick up on the items actually being taken, but it picked up on someone crossing the street at the same time as the neighbors opposite were still messing around, and it very much sounds like my wheelbarrow and soil being lumbered about. I can hear them speaking about how heavy it is and the sound of the wheelbarrow. Then we get to a few days later. We have a power cut in my street. I'm speaking to one of the neighbors, and they tell me they saw a man with my wheelbarrow leaving our block and walking to the opposite side of the road a couple of days ago. I asked her what day it was, and she said she can't remember. During the power cut, I had a bad feeling someone was going to try to take advantage of the situation. So I sat with my living room window open, and I heard the gate go at 2 a.m. I couldn't see from the window due to streetlights also being out, so I went downstairs, and in walks a man. I confront him, and he walks around the back of my garden. Are you lost? Can I help you? Why are you walking about my garden? Now this man looks exactly like my neighbor that lives opposite me. He walked out the gate, completely ignoring my existence, sort of mumbling. I rang my partner, and after about 10 seconds I go out the gate and see his partner at the door and him going in. I phoned the non-emergency police line and informed them of both incidents. They didn't seem that fussed about it when they attended to see what happened, other than to tell me to phone them if anything else happened. I'm ticked off at this point, so I put a note through their door asking them to put my stuff back, essentially, and that I have cameras. Nothing else. While I was out today, it looks like the neighbor opposite has knocked downstairs. I spoke to the landlady about the incident yesterday and told her someone that lives opposite was poking about her stuff, and I'm pretty certain they stole some items from me. She never mentioned them doing work for her, but now I'm wondering whether they were, and I've accused them of stealing because why else would they knock? No sign of them knocking at mine, though. Unsure what to do. The last thing I want is to be living amongst thieves, but I don't know if I'm being overly paranoid, as I'm shaken up by this man lurking about my property. Wondering what others would do in this situation, if anything. Cheers. Hellfreezer's note. I don't think you're unnecessarily worked up here. I mean, someone sneaking about your property late at night and not even acknowledging your existence. That's suspicious as hell. Make sure your cameras are getting a good view of all areas of your garden and that they're able to pick up whatever they might see at night. If you catch them in the act, then that's something substantial you can show to the police. It's a very weird situation, and it does sound like they're up to no good. 4. I've been blessed with probably the most annoying meth-headed adult children living above me that I've ever come across and just need to vent. For context, above me live a mid-20s couple, guy and his girlfriend. I've lived here for about 4 years, and they've been here almost 2. The dude's mom is the owner of their apartment, and the prospect of management doing anything more than they have is slim. The dude has a criminal history: meth, heroin, burglary, robbery, theft, assault with assault rifle, etc. The mom is an attorney. Go figure. who has only ever been at the apartment once, seemingly to vacuum it for a week straight. These people couch rot every night, never leave their house, and do not have jobs. The dude is in college and most likely is just being supported by said mom. Nothing inherently wrong with that if you're not being a horrible human being, and by proxy his girlfriend is probably living there rent-free. Situations aside, the noise started when they first moved in. Months of their dog running across the floor seemingly with a long chain on, being dragged also across the floor, yelling, screaming, and the sound of 24/7 nightmare blunt rotation weed coughing. That sounded like I was living in a geriatric ward. Even myself being a daily weed smoker, I found the sound to be bloody tolerable. Long story short, I contacted management, they sent out a notice, and some of the noise mentioned had subsided. But then the constant heel stomping began, from the girlfriend's end. This person will stomp around back and forth from all day and night, as if on their way to liberate an entire country, but will not take their dog out for a walk. They will stomp their way across the apartment in the middle of the night just to throw some large object or a pair of shoes across their bedroom floor, without actually stepping in the room, or they will go into their room, stomp around in place, and then run out. Anytime I'm having a conversation where I'm laughing, saying something loudly, etc., nowhere near I know they are, this person actually runs stomping to the room right above me. And before anyone comments that perhaps I am making these patterns up in my head, I've had friends stay at my apartment and confirm everything. I've had friends and co-workers confirm the noise just by hearing it through being on the phone with me. Even the deranged, deliberate stomping. Even the moving rooms when my friends were on their phone. I thought it was paranoia until it was validated by more than one person. I work 2 jobs, mainly from home, as well as I am being trained toward a new career, from home. That being said, I am at home and online from early morning to afternoon every day. I have my noise-canceling headphones on, white noise and fan blasting, and can still hear this crap. And when I leave the house and come back, the first sound I hear is a sudden scattering and stomping upstairs. It never stops. And in the evenings, often the noise of the dog yelping, sounding like its skin is getting ripped off. But again, they will not take the dog outside, even though one of these tweakers is awake and stomping around at the top of almost every hour, day or middle of the night. If the girl happens to not be home, it is practically dead silent. You can hear the dude's deep-throating, smoke-choking for a bit, and then silence. Not even a life sign of the dog either, except from an occasional sound of patter. Honestly, I feel like this dude doesn't care about what's happening. Then the girl comes in, and the heels and chaos return. So, how the noise personally affects me, night and day aside, what ticks me off the most about all this, to a heated rage, is that these people have a large, young dog that they only take out 2 times, maybe 3 times a day. They will stomp around back and forth from 7 a.m. and won't take the dog out until about 2 p.m., once it's already audibly whimpering and anxiously pattering across the floor. On top of that, they will take it out for less than 5 minutes, just out in the alleyway, only to not take it out again until nighttime, when once again it's anxiously pattering across the floor. The fact that these tweakers keep this poor dog indoors almost 24/7, while going on 100 times cross-country walks inside their apartment, is the main rage-inducing factor. Honestly, also looking for some ideas for some light annoyance I can do that won't affect my downstairs neighbors. Note, the downstairs neighbors are Ukrainian refugees, so the last thing I want to do is cause sonic warfare to them, while trying to give the upstairs a-holes a taste of their own medicine. Is there anything I can legally do concerning their dog? A tip line, calling them out. 5. To get to the point, an outside cat had kittens. We love cats. My partner especially loves calico cats. He was invited over by the neighbors to see the kittens who were born outside. While he was over there, he made a harmless joke, something to the effect of, "This one is going to turn up missing," and laughed. We have 4 cats. We just rescued a kitten. We do not want another. This was maybe a week ago. Last night, the lady neighbor came out and asked my partner if he'd seen the kitten. He was working on his car and I was behind the other 2, so I doubt she saw me. He denied having taken the cat, and she walked around their entire house swearing and calling whoever took them a piece of crap. We ignored it as we didn't take it. Today, I was outside playing with my toddler in the pool. We were in our backyard when the male neighbor walked up and started to ask if I had seen the kitten. I was angry, so I don't remember the conversation in its entirety, but it went something like this. Have you seen a kitten around here? The calico one? No. My partner told your wife yesterday that we hadn't seen it. If I find that cat around here, we're gonna have a problem. I've been nothing but nice to you. Why are you coming over here threatening me with problems? We didn't take the cat. Well, your partner said this one was going to turn up missing. Okay. Have you heard of a joke? We didn't take the cat. We have 4 already. We don't want any more. He started making threats of calling the park and the ASPCA. I think you need to walk away. Well, he came back outside after our argument, which I never even took my feet out of the pool for, and made a show of having a loud conversation, making sure to mention, and she has kids over there. I'm not sure what my kid has to do with a missing kitten. Anyway, we didn't take the cat, but a few things are tense with them. Side note, I asked my partner to give their dog a treat last year, with male neighbor's permission, and he almost ripped my partner's face off. The only reason my partner didn't get bit is because he used his hand to push away from the dog as it lunged and the owner yanked back on the leash, or my partner would have been seriously injured. Not sure what advice I'm looking for, just upset I've never been anything but kind to those people. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Naughty Neighbours episode 49. Big thanks to everyone who allowed me to use their stories. Before you go, please do hit the like button and consider subscribing if you hadn't already done so. If you'd like to support the channel, my Patreon is available, that's linked in the description. $1 or more a month gets you early access to the videos on Monday, and we also have a link to my merchandise store on Teespring there as well. Okay, let's move on to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is, do you have an especially favorite stand-up comedian? With me, I think it goes by eras. I still like the comedians I listened to when I was younger. For reference, when I say younger, I'm 43 years old, so the ones I listened to in the 90s when I was a teenager, probably folks like Eddie or Susie Izzard. I believe they go by both names these days. As I grew older, I discovered people like Bill Hicks, Lenny Bruce, Margaret Cho. I'm quite fond of Margaret Cho's work. And if we're pulling for more modern comedians, I absolutely adore James A. Caster, and I've come to appreciate Taylor Tomlinson recently. And of course, Eliza Schlesinger is usually good for a laugh. Let me know what you think in a comment below, and before we go, let's take a look at the answer of the day from a previous video. And this one came from Naughty Neighbours 48. And the question, helpfully supplied by Newcomb, was, do you know anyone who doesn't use the internet? And today's answer comes from M. Lee. I have a family friend who doesn't use the internet. I have known her since I was a kid, and she only used computers at work and never at home. She doesn't even own one. She has a basic phone, and that's the most tech she uses outside of watching some TV. She is an awesome lady who would rather be outside in her garden than indoors on devices. Thank you very much for your answer, Emily. And that's a great, I'm the opposite. I'd rather be inside on my devices than outside in the garden. But that's just my preference, because there are many ways to live a life. And unless the way you live your life is by stabbing hobos or something, there's not really a wrong way to do it. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.